Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give a couple of minutes whilst people just enter the webinar. Thank you for joining us. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's afternoon for most of you joining the call. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar from Complaint to Redress, Routes to Remedy for Garment Workers in Pakistan. My name is Lara Strangways. I lead the business and human rights practice at Global Rights Compliance, and I'm very pleased to be here moderating today's discussion on behalf of our organisation. Today's webinar marks the launch of our new report from Complaint to Redress, Routes to Remedy for Garment Workers in Pakistan. The report draws on almost 3 years of evidence around provision of remedy that we've collected through MyVox, a digital tool, and GRC's community-based monitoring program in Pakistan with local civil society organisations and trade unions, some of which are represented here today through our panellists, as well as consultations with government institutions. We've spoken with civil society organisations, trade unions, and also private sector actors on the findings. We wrote this report because really at the heart of what we wanted to discuss was a very practical and important question from our perspective. When do garment workers experience harm, and really what happens next? We were looking at what routes to remedy are available in practice in Pakistan, how accessible they are, and where they fall short. And I think, it's important to frame this conversation not only for garment workers in Pakistan who continue to face persistent labour rights violations, including wage theft, unsafe working conditions, harassment, and many others, but also to kind of shine a light on where those judicial and non-judicial grievance mechanisms exist, where access to effective remedy remains uneven or where it remains fragmented and too often out of reach for the people that it's supposed to work for. But there will be people joining this discussion today that are not based in Pakistan or perhaps don't have supply chains in Pakistan. And I think we really want to ensure that the wider relevance of this conversation is brought out because ultimately, routes to remedy is a central part of all human rights due diligence. And from GRC's perspective, we need to ensure that access to remedy is not a peripheral issue, but remains a core pillar of responsible business conduct, as it is central to the UNGP. So our aim today is really to explore what remedy systems look like in practice, where the barriers are, and what more companies, policymakers, labour institutions, unions, and many other actors could be doing to make these systems more effective and more worker-centred. So we do have a really great panel here with us today. They bring perspectives from research, worker support, labour systems, and also multi-stakeholder mechanisms. We'll begin with a presentation of the key findings of the report from Penny, a legal advisor at Global Rights Compliance, before hearing reflections from our speakers and opening the floor up to you all for questions. So just to give a quick rundown of who we have on the panel, as well as Penny, we have Khalid Mahmood, who is Director of Labour Education Foundation and is one of the partners on this programme. We have Dr. Javed Gill, who's a former Central Labour Advisor and previously worked as authority under the Payment of Wages Act and Workmen Compensation Commissioner. We have Kirsty Drew, who is the Chief Complaints Officer from the Pakistan Accord, and Zara Khan, founder and general secretary of the Home-Based Women Workers Federation, again, a partner with GRC under this programme. So thank you again for being here. I'm delighted to be moderating this panel, and I will hand over to you, Penny, to take us through the key findings of the report.
Thank you, Lara, for the introductions, and then thanks everyone for being here. Khaldun, could you please put up the slides? Let's give it some minutes. Okay, never mind. When Khaldun, you see that, please put up the slides. I could just start. So I'm going to walk you through some of the key findings from our report on access to remedy for garment workers in Pakistan. Um, at its core, this report, as Lara mentioned, came up as a natural outcome from our program in Pakistan and from the impact that we have been seeing on the ground. So first, we identified what many other organizations have already highlighted in the past, that there's basically a systemic nature of labor rights violations happening in the garment factories across the countries. So it's from wage violations to lack of employment benefits, occupational safety and health violations, and also harassment. So this left us basically asking ourselves a seemingly simple question: when workers experience harm, can they actually get a remedy? Because what we have seen from other contexts is that while mechanisms exist on paper, in practice, justice is often out of reach for them. So we started from a clear observation from this program, thanks to our partners who are on the ground and are doing all this amazing field work. There are many grievance mechanisms available, but they don't necessarily mean that workers can actually access them in practice. And that's for many reasons. So workers face real barriers, including limited awareness of their rights, confusion about where to go, and very often systems are slow or very difficult to navigate on their own. And this matters because access to remedy is a core part of the UNGPs and, as you know, applies to both states and companies. Um, and the reason why we chose this particular time to publish this report is twofold. One is because the expectations around human rights due diligence are now growing. We have the CSDDD, we have the CSRD, we have the EUFLR and other frameworks that are emerging. And also, most importantly, Pakistan is now developing its next national action plan on business and human rights. So that will be published within this year. So we thought there is a real opportunity here to strengthen remediation systems within the country, and why not pave the way for other countries as well. And that's how we came up with this report, to basically try and contribute to the discussions around remediation efforts and provide some recommendations that could be considered at the policy level of strengthening Pakistan's commitments under the UNGPs. In terms of our methodology, our findings are grounded in 3 years of running this program in Pakistan. So we have combined worker testimonies and case data from our community-based monitoring tool, also consultations with more than 20 stakeholder groups, including government bodies, civil society organizations, trade unions, academics, and suppliers. And finally, desk-based legal analysis focusing on the legal framework around remediation, both at the federal and the provincial level. And that was a tricky part also of this report, because the legal system in Pakistan is very, very complex after the devolution of powers to the provinces, especially. But I'm going to stick a bit longer to MyVox. That's our community-based monitoring tool that captures worker complaints in real time. So between July 2023, that's when MyVox started launching, and December 2025, we recorded over 5,000 complaints related to labor rights violations. And most of them, around 82%, were referred to some form of remediation. So I just wanted to flag here that MyVox is not a grievance mechanism in a strict sense, but we have nevertheless seen the majority of these complaints that were actually proceeded to some sort of remediation channel, depending always on the nature of the violation. So this allowed us to basically extract some key insights on the barriers that workers typically face in accessing remedy, to see what works best for them, and to also explore ways to make remediation systems stronger. So among the cases that were referred to remediation channels, it's worth noting that the vast majority went to the labor departments, the provincial labor departments. Many were resolved through out-of-court settlements, and very few actually reached courts or formal judicial mechanisms. So this already tells us something very important, that it seems that workers rely on accessible local mechanisms more, and formal systems are not often accessible for them unless they are actively guided through this process by a trade union or other organization in the process of navigating these systems. So what we decided to do in terms of the report, first, we had to map all the mechanisms available. Basically, it's not all, it's all the key mechanisms that we have seen that garment workers have access to. So on the state side, the state-based judicial mechanisms include the labor courts, and then state-based quasi-judicial mechanisms include the ombudsperson for protection against harassment, the National Commission for Human Rights, the National Industrial Relations Commission, and then we have the state-based non-judicial mechanisms, which are very, very important in the context of Pakistan, and that is the Labor Department's alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and also social protection institution, which include the EOBI, the Social Security institutions, and the Workers' Welfare Fund. And then on the non-state side, we have the company-based mechanisms, collaborative initiatives such as MSIs and global framework agreements, and then we have international avenues such as strategic litigation and other international mechanisms for when cases escalate. And in terms of the key findings, there are many key findings. I'm going to try to keep this a bit short and to just mention those that are really sticking out. So in regards with the main barriers that prohibit workers from accessing remedy, we have identified that, first of all, violations are often systematic and overlapping, which means that remedy can take many forms depending on the violation. So a typical example we have seen on the ground is that workers complain about, for example, wage violations and the fact that they don't have social security card at the same time, which means two different pathways in terms of remediation. So designing the remediation systems needs to take into account this reality that we have to deal with multiple violations happening at the same time. Secondly, the state-based mechanisms especially are affected by delays, by costs for litigation or for transportation to the places where they need to be, and also capacity constraints, which is a typical issue. And for workers, we have several barriers as well. Some of them were mentioned earlier, but we have a major lack of information and awareness of labor rights among workers, along with employer resistance, which can sometimes take the form of retaliation measures. So we have also seen on the ground that if workers speak up, then they are being threatened in many occasions or dismissed. And then another reality is that company grievance mechanisms often operate in parallel, which means that several brands, for example, sourcing from a single factory might have different channels, and that's confusing workers even more many times. But despite these challenges, we also found that some mechanisms are working relatively well compared to others. So the labor departments are often the main entry point because they are local, they are fast, they are free of charge, and they can resolve disputes through negotiation, basically. And then the alternative dispute resolution is also promising. It's faster and less adversarial, but we do recommend it when it's provided through a formal process where both parties are equally involved in the negotiations. Then the ombudsman person for harassment cases stands out as an effective mechanism, although the barrier there is the fear of retaliation, especially for women. And importantly, worker organizations have been highlighted as the most crucial and most trusted basic entry point for workers. And to that extent, collaborative approaches like community-based approaches can also deliver results in terms of driving the change at the local level. And that's because both trade unions, worker organizations, and community-based approaches, they fill a gap that's missing from most grievance mechanisms, and that is the trust and the worker empowerment. Now, onto the recommendations side for policymakers, which is basically the state, both at the federal and the provincial level. We have suggested that there needs to be an improvement in the coordination between the federal and the provincial levels. And that could be done, for example, by setting minimum standards that would apply across the country. Also build institutional capacity. So really take care of the system in itself, to have it staffed, for example. I think it will be discussed later on, but staffing labor departments with trained officers and compliance officers also to check on factories is very important. To this extent, also increase transparency and accountability within the government departments as well. Then another suggestion would be to strengthen complaint handling and ADR, alternative dispute resolution processes. That I think Pakistan is already making important steps towards this direction, but we see a lot of potential in these out-of-court settlements. And then for companies, it's the one most important is to engage in collaborative initiatives and don't be afraid of engaging with worker organizations and trade unions. In fact, to involve workers in designing grievance mechanism would be a very positive step toward that direction. So if a company is here with us today, don't be afraid of community-based approaches, because sometimes they are very, very effective at the local level. And then use the leverage with their suppliers more consistently. And I think I briefly mentioned it earlier, but when there are several brands, for example, sourcing from a single factory, some coordination between those brands would be very beneficial so that workers are not confused about which grievance to follow. So also collaborating, not with just worker organizations, but with other brands, with suppliers, and making it a more like a collaborative initiative would also be beneficial for remediation. And finally, I might be out of time here. So Pakistan has already many of the laws and mechanisms in place. In fact, it has a very, very comprehensive legal system, but the effective remedy depends on how this system works in practice. And this requires coordination, accountability, and support for worker organizations. Because ultimately access to remedies where rights become real. And I'll stop here. Thank you, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Penny. I obviously have been privy to the findings of this report, even prior to its publication, and some just really interesting insights into the network of state-based judicial, non-judicial mechanisms, as well as those available through operational grievance mechanisms, for example. I think we're going to kind of move into the panel discussion now, and get some thoughts from our panelists on some of these findings and their experiences also with remedy in the Pakistani context, and in some cases more broadly. So Khalid, perhaps I can turn to you first to talk maybe from your perspective about what makes a grievance mechanism trustworthy from a worker's perspective. I mean, I think this is something that we've seen as a key component, and you obviously have a lot of experience dealing with workers on a first-hand basis. So over to you for some thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you very much, GRC, for developing this report and also inviting us to this webinar. I think, first of all, we need to understand the situation in which we are part of this project, or we are implementing this project on the ground. This is a community-based service, I would say, to the workers where we are trying to record the violations happening in the industry. Now, ideally, this would have not needed if the grievance mechanisms under the laws of Pakistan and under the international compliance mechanisms and the industry's thoughts which we hear time to time, if they would have been working. Why the workers are coming to our legal centers established in the communities? Because they do not have platforms available in the factories which can hear their grievances. Although under the law there are possibilities of developing those mechanisms, and especially when we have laws which clearly give workers freedom of association and collective bargaining, and under these laws there are different kind of committees which can handle the workers' grievances easily if the law is implemented, and if the mentality of the employers is such which allows workers to organize freely and bargain collectively and develop such committees and be part of these committees. And if there is a culture inside the factories where workers feel safe to raise any kind of grievance, this is a reality which is shown by our data as well, that there are a lot of violations happening in the factory, and there are many kinds of violations happening in the factories. So this is the situation of the implementation of the laws, and the situation where the international brands are saying that they are having wonderful social audits under which they do not receive any kind of serious grievances. This is often what we hear from the brands as well. In this situation, we have seen that there are incidents happening in Pakistan, especially in the garment industry where we're working on health and safety. There are incidents of harassment. There are violations of wages. There are no independent unions in the factories. And there are a different kind of other violations happening. So when the workers are coming to us, first of all, they are under such pressure that they cannot talk in the factory. They feel very insecure when they approach to our team members in the field, or they come to our legal aid centers. They are already very threatened. We have to provide them this confidence that whatever they are saying to us will remain with us, and we will not move further without their consultation and without their agreement. There is a process to reach out to workers. Our team members often go outside the factories, they introduce themselves, they meet with workers with reference to other workers who already have attended the centers. We do orientation sessions with the workers. We try to work with the workers in their free time on their weekly off days, and we try to build a trust between the workers and our organizations which are part of this project. This is how we are able to collect this big number of violations, and we are able to record it, and then we are able to follow these up with the workers. Now, when the worker is agreeing that my complaint should be given to the labor department, that means the workers has already decided that if now I am threatened to lose the job, I am ready to face the consequences. This is the level of threats which the workers are facing if they are raising their complaint to anybody. that means they are already willing to come forward and they are able to face the threat, or they're willing to face the threats. With the labor departments, when we write the applications on behalf of workers and we bring the workers to the labor department also knows what is actually happening in the factories. So some of the labor department officials are cooperative, and they are cooperative only in the situations when they see that the worker has an organization behind them. When the workers are coming with some trade union leaders, and we involve the trade union leaders in our communication with the labor department. So the labor department officials are sometimes cooperative and they try to negotiate independently with the employers. They call managers often, they call them and they try to solve these problems. And this is what we call out of court or out of department settlements. These are not officially recorded. And sometimes the grievances are handled, but most of the time the management of the factories do not listen to us, do not listen to even labor department. In some cases, we have been asked by the labor department that please do whatever you want to do. They are not listening to us. They are so powerful. We cannot do anything in this, and we cannot take this complaint as formal complaint. You can go to the payment of wages authority, or you can go to the labor court and do what you can do in this case. So this is a situation in which we are receiving the complaints and we're trying to solve the issues faced by the workers. If we go to the labor court and if we go to the payment of wages authority, that means it will take time. Now, important thing to note here is that very often it happens that the workers who are dismissed are taken back by the factory. This is a big problem. If the workers are dismissed, they are losing jobs, their cases are taking so long in the labor court. Dismissed workers' cases are very difficult to resolve through out of court settlements. Only minor settlements like the overtime issues and other things where no big financial issues are involved, the factory management there are willing to resolve. So I will stop here, but I will later would like to contribute more to this. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think, you touched on some really important points there in terms of the non-functioning of the OGMs and the need to build trust, enabling workers then to come forward and discuss their issues with the centres. I think I want to pick up also on that Labour Department piece, and maybe Dr. Javid, I can turn to you about the Labour departments. And they emerged in the research that we did as an effective first entry point for workers, and Khalid has just talked a little bit about why that might be. And what are the current challenges within the Labour departments from your perspective, and are there ways that those can be addressed to enable better coordination and better resolution of issues for workers?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Do you hear me?
We
Good
do.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I am going to present about Labor Department and certain challenges about grievance redress mechanism, particularly talking about non-formal or direct redress mechanisms available in the Labor Department. So starting from the ratification of the convention, Pakistan has basically ratified ILO Convention 81, Labor Inspection Convention. And in accordance with that convention, Pakistan has established labor departments. Those labor departments are at the provincial level and they are responsible for implementation of labor laws. Laws relating to working conditions, terms of employment, health and safety, and other areas, and also laws relating to freedom of association and collective bargaining. After the 18th Amendment, and provincial autonomy in labor. The laws have been devolved to the provinces, and particularly the law relating to working conditions, payment of wages, terms of employment, like that. And the laws relating to freedom of association is at the federal level and also at the provincial level. It is working in both levels. So there are so many issues. I totally agree with the findings of the report and also what Mr. Khalid was saying. I think there are so many issues. We have, if we go through the organization, we have labor inspectors, then supervisory staff, and it depends upon the personalities. If a worker go to the department, if certain a good personality is sitting there, they would be handling the complaints in a better manner. Otherwise, there may be certain clashes with because they have vested interests also in the field. So then there may be some problems. So the system of direct complaints is not that effective, which should be, I think, according to my opinion, it should be more effective because it is less time taking, and it is and in this system workers usually don't have to lose their job. Otherwise, in the formal setup, there are so many problems. So but there are so many challenges. Those challenges relate to capacity issues, because there are issues about the capacity of the officers dealing with the complaints. Some of the officers are very good, some are not very good. Some other issues like heavy workload, lack of interest of the officers due to absence of initiatives. Time constraint is a major issue. So there are certain clashes between the officers and their vested interest in the organization. There may also be an issue. Then some of the officers are pro-labor, some of the officers are not pro-labor. So this is also an area. Then in the third place, when we are discussing gaps in the accessibility and awareness, there are so many gaps. For example, workers are unaware, and even in certain cases, employers are also unaware. Weak trade union is also an area, because you can't find trade unions everywhere. In those cases, I think these institutional backing to the complainant, I think this is very important, whether from any civil society organization or any other organization. I think this is very important. There is no exclusive mechanism in the labor department which can attract the complainants and promote complainants to visit their offices, and with the protection and safety that their jobs will not be gone. So that would also be required. This is a major area, major gap. Time is most of the issues are time taking, and in case of non-formal, informal complaints, workers, these officers are busy somewhere else, and they don't take it seriously, and it take too much time, because due to heavy workload, they are occupied somewhere else. So there are certain opportunities also, because in the new labor code, there are new institutions are being, they are proposed to be established. For example, mediation office, that would be there in every district. And then equal employment opportunity office is going to be established. So these opportunities should be, I think we can see it in future, and those are very important for complaint redressal. So we can also involve at a larger scale to the civil society organization who can back up, I think institutional backup with the complainants, so that the complaints are redressed and jobs are also saved. So with that, I would complete. I think in case of questions, I would be available.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those comments. And I think the capacity building of civil society organizations and trade unions and that are able to bring these complaints is definitely a key finding from the report and something we have seen consistently through the 4 years of work with our partners. The more resources and capacity they are given, the more work that they can do on behalf of workers and therefore redress complaints. So thank you for those reflections. And I think, Kirsty, if we could turn to you regarding also mechanisms like the Pakistan Accord that have obviously played a really crucial role. Indeed, when we began this program in 22, the Pakistan Accord was just kind of in its kind of beginning and negotiation. So it's very exciting that this has been a development over the last few years. And I would love to hear your reflections really on how that provides effective remediation for violations for garment workers in terms of its remit in occupational health and safety violations and improving conditions in the factories.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. I think firstly, just to say what the Pakistan Accord is, just in case not everybody knows. So it's a legally binding agreement that is signed by over 135 global brands with 2 global unions, Industrial and Uni Global Union. And the signatories make a commitment that the workplace, the workers are going to be safe in the factories that supply those global brands that have signed the agreement. And the Pakistan Accord implements the agreement through 3 main programs. There's an inspection program, there's a training program to build the capacity of safety committees, but also to inform workers about their rights. And there's a complaint mechanism. So these 3 components really fit together. And I think in terms of the key characteristics are, one, that it's legally binding. The brands have made a legally binding obligation that their suppliers are going to participate and cooperate in the program. And 2, it's a collective sectoral approach. So you have the collective strength of all the brands. So now just turning to the complaint mechanisms, the scope is OSH, and that OSH is very broadly defined. So it's fire and building safety, the chemicals, PPE, dust, noise, any sort of physical hazards, but also some of the issues that the other speakers have been talking about: excessive hours, excessive overtime, denial of sick leave, denial of maternity leave. Those kind of issues are also covered. So OSH is defined very broadly. In terms of our practice, maybe I can identify 3 key principles. One is we have an investigative approach. So when we receive a complaint, we will investigate through doing unannounced investigations at the factory, talking to witnesses, doing observations. So I think that's very important in terms of equitability. We're addressing maybe the imbalances that exist between workers and between the factories. We do our own independent investigations in order to develop a picture of the facts. I think the second point is we really focus on delivering remedy, and that's tied to the first point. We try to get the evidence, and then on the basis of the evidence, we really look to deliver a make whole remedy, and that means trying to put the person back into the position they would have been before the harm occurred. So there's really a link between our investigations and then, for the cases that we find to have merit, to deliver a fair and as whole a remedy as we can. And I think the third point is enforceability. We have the collective strength of the brands behind us, so we are able to make decisions on complaints and what the remedy should be on a complaint. So I think those are really important principles. And just maybe we could just give some examples of what that would actually mean. We had a complaint concerning a death of a worker in a factory, and in order to investigate and resolve the complaint, we did unannounced investigations at the factory. We found the evidence for the death. We understood the circumstances of the death. On that basis, we then delivered compensation for the family, but also we looked to prevention. We got a change in the standard operating procedures to make sure that this incident wouldn't happen again. There were also issues around the employment status of the workers, so we were able to get a change in the employment status so that the workers in similar positions had became permanent workers and were registered for Social Security. So in another case, we have a severe injury, a worker who became blind due to a chemical splash, but he wasn't using PPE. So again, we did an investigation in the factory in order to really understand the facts, and on that basis got compensation for the worker, got him reinstated to his position, but he didn't have to go to work. He's now re-registered for Social Security and able to have the medical treatment that he needs. So it's really about doing the investigations and then on the basis of our findings, getting a remedy that's as complete as possible, and also addressing prevention. So in both those cases, we spoke to the other workers about what happened in the complaint and what you would need to do to avoid the incident happening again. So I think it's very much that dual role of a complaint mechanism of providing the remedy to the complainant, but also taking steps to prevent the harm from happening again. And in that way, it's very much embedded in the human rights due diligence approaches and indeed obligations of brands.
Thank you so much for those reflections. And I think, obviously the Accord has provided a really great model in terms of a legally binding approach and this, as you said, this sectoral approach for brands to buy into. And I think we've seen and is profiled in this report that where collective approaches are used, that can often be much more successful in creating systemic change in terms of not only addressing the complaint, but as you say, addressing the root cause of the issue. So some really interesting findings. Thank you. And finally, I'll turn to Zara. Zara, perhaps you could touch a little bit about what Khalid was saying earlier on about the lack of independent trade unions in the factories, or the absence of effective unions, and kind of why worker organisations are so important to ensure remedy, and what the barriers are preventing workers currently from organising or joining unions. And if you have the time, I'd also be interested from your perspective about women workers, because I know in the report we mentioned the issue with women workers being discouraged from raising their complaints with the ombudsman. So yeah, if you have time, perhaps a quick note on that point as well. Thank you.
Thanks to GRC for organizing this very important discussion and inviting all of us to have our points on the whole report. So as a trade unionist, I see this report reflects the real situation of the garment workers in Pakistan, where workers are, like as we all the panelists are saying, their workers are unpaid, working long hours and in unsafe conditions, face dismissal and denial of the rights. So, but even when violations happen, many workers do not know where to go or are afraid to raise any issue. So on this point, trade union and workers' organizations are often the only space or the safe space for the workers. Like when I joined the trade union movement, so there was a saying, and everyone was saying that if a worker with a union is a worker with a map. So it's really very important that the trade union and the workers' organizations, because they are providing the technical expertise and collective protection that an worker lacks. So we listen to them, explain about their rights, help documenting the complaint, and guide workers to the right forum where to go. Like we have so many complex structure. So there is a labor department as well, there is a labor code as well, there is a NIRC as well, which is really very dangerous kind of organization, especially for the worker side. Then there is a ombudsman office, and then so many institutions we have. So in reality, most workers cannot access any remedies system alone. So because many are confused, afraid, and as I said, unaware of their rights and where to go for the complaint. So during that, we find the whole work which we are doing in the community, basically, because it's really become very difficult to work in the or organize the workers in the factory. So that's why we are working in the community and organizing the workers there. So during this whole period, we find that workers are not workers are more likely to achieve successful outcome when they have a representative body to verify their claims and put through the bureaucracy. So we have so many examples on this one, like one union member come to us and ask that we need to apply for the change in the union. So labor department was really very what I can say to them. So they are linger on the process. Like the court is saying, or the law is saying that if anyone apply for the union formation or anyone apply for the to change their office bearers list, so there is a certain time limit that they have to respond to that union. But it's delayed till 6 months, 2 months, 4 months. So it's happening everywhere. So when the trade union or the workers organization is standing with the workers, so we achieve so many successful examples as well. So therefore, the trade union should not be seen. It's very important that the trade union should not be seen outside of the whole remedy system, but as a central part of it. And brand and supplier must have to understand this one. So if we are talking about the effective remedy, so we must protect the right to organize and strengthen these groups, especially for the women workers facing harassment and the retaliation. So the second hurdle which we face, as I discuss about the complexity of the system. So in Pakistan, I said that we have to worker have to use different kind of institution for different issues. So on paper, like Khalid Saab said, on paper, this looks very good. But in practice, it is really confusing and exhausting as well. It's really, really frustrating for the workers, even for the organizations as well. Like I can give you the example of ombudsman, like you have asked with me the question. So in one case, we have won the case because the lady has very trust on us and she stood firmly on on her position. So the company has to hire her again in the factory, and the factory has paid 1.5 million to that lady. But in another case, the female workers have withdrawn the case. We recently got information that the female workers got withdraw her case. It's because the system is very slow. When we always we are saying that if the system is slow, it means that we are denying with the justice system. So female workers who raise this kind of issues really is really facing so many issues, because she has to face their family as well. She has to face the workers who are working in the factory, like the co-workers. So many times workers do not know which office to approach in this situation for which problem and when. So here the biggest issue is, I must say, that is a lack of the formal contract. Without an appointment letter, a worker is invisible to the law. So 95% in our so many researches, it's evidence that workers don't have the basic thing, which is the appointment letter. And this is the main thing which we have to support the workers, how they have to collect the information, or how they collect the document, or document the things to prove their visibility basically in the book. So workers need simple information in their own languages, step-by-step guidance and support from the legal aid and the unions as well. So this report highlights success of our community-based monitoring and the legal aid center, which our panelist has already spoken about. So we must scale these move so that navigating the system does not require a law degree to just a fair process.
Thank you so much. And I think some clear kind of case studies there in terms of the role of trade unions. And maybe we'll have a question if we get to it, Zara, that has been put in the Q&A about trade unions. But first, I want to just use the last kind of 10 minutes to ask some of these questions to all the panelists. Perhaps we start with the ISO 9000 certifications and shape certifications question. Khaled, I wonder whether I can put this to you. And I think that this attendee was asking really where ISO 9000 certifications and shape certifications are there and where the systems are documented and streamlined and there are audits based on these standards. Is that enough to help the workers, as most of the garment industry is somehow linked to these exports and there are these strong checks there from the international buyers that should be safeguarding the rights of the workers?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very important question. I think in the Pakistani industry, not only in the garment industry, but all other industries as well, I think these kind of certifications and the social audits from the brands have totally failed, not only in Pakistan, but in all other countries as well, production countries, I would say. This has been proven time and again by many studies, independent researchers, and also it is evident from the kind of incidents that we have seen in the garment industry, especially in last decade or so. On the health and safety issues, we have seen incidents like Ali Enterprises, we have seen Rana Plaza, we have seen before that Tazreen fire in Bangladesh, we have seen such incidents where all the brands were saying that they have done social audits, their reports are fine, and the workplaces are safe. This is just one example. Ali Enterprises is a very clear example from Pakistan, where 2 weeks before the incidents, the report was issued by the social audit team that this factory is safe for the workers, and we saw the result of that fire. Now, when it comes to the issues of wages, working hours, overtime, harassment, what these social audits are doing, they are going in the factories. Often it happens that the factory management knows when the social audit is happening and they are threatening workers, literally threatening workers, that if they talk against the management will, they will be dismissed and they will face the consequences. The social audits are happening in presence of the management and the supervisors. No worker dare to talk to the social auditors free inside the factories. So what we did, when we were discussing with the brands based on the data that we collected, some of the brands were willing to accept our offer to have off-site interviews with the workers. And one big brand actually did the meeting with the workers offsite in our legal aid center. And when the workers from different factories complained about the wages, the working hours, the overtime issues, and we asked the brand representative that you can go and check in the factory, you have access to their time record, you have access to their wages. These are the wage slips that the workers are showing to you. You can go and see if the things are different. The brand representative said that we cannot do that. We cannot ask the factory to show us all the records. So they, in practical way, they refuse to verify the complaints given by the workers directly to the brand representative. But I give you one other example. In one case of harassment, which came to us through our legal aid center, we directly contacted the brand. The brand had to, because this was a very sensitive issue, and that only happens when the worker was willing to come forward openly against this kind of harassment, and the brand had to intervene, and they went into the factory, they tried to change the system. But in all the investigations that the brands did, they were still not able to dismiss the harasser. Instead, he was changed from one department to other department. And the same kind of threatening environment existed for the workers there. So this is the kind of real situation in the factory. So I would not agree that these certifications and the social audits are there to change the situation. Rather, they are eye-washing mechanisms, and they are just to show to the consumers in the West that everything is good in the supply chain. Everything is not good. A lot of things needs to improve here.
Thank you. And I think, we won't have time to answer this question in terms of how effective are labour support organisations in grievance systems, but I think Khalid has just shown the role of labour support organisations in these types of complaints, being able to host workers in centres with brand representatives to have these conversations that they're unable to have in the factory. So hopefully that is a case study to illustrate it, and we have many more. So please feel free to reach out to Khalid or GRC, and we'd be happy to furnish you with some of those. Dr. Javid, I wanted to just pick up a question with you, which I think is really interesting in the last few minutes, which is with approximately 72% of the workforce engaged in the informal economy and nearly 97% of workers in some case studies lacking written employment contracts, how can state-based mechanisms like the Labour Department and social protection institutions such as EOBI successfully provide redress when the primary legal proof of an employment relationship is absent? And I thought that this was a really interesting question because we see this quite a lot in terms of absence of formal contracts or formal employment relationships. So do you have any reflections on that from your experience with the Labour Department?
Yes. Most of the labor forces in the factories is working on temporary basis. They are either employed through contractor or outsourced. So there is an issue of non-issuance of appointment letters. So this is the major area. I think in the new labor code, I think government has already announced certification of third-party agencies which are being registered, and they would be issuing appointment letters, whether the workers are working on temporary basis or they are on contract basis. They would be employee of some of the organization, whether that of the contractor or the principal employers. I think that would resolve the issue. Otherwise, I think there are so many issues, because if they issue appointment letters, then whole responsibility of the employers regarding compensation, payment of wages, and other issues. That's why they are not issuing those letters. I think through new code, I think that issue will be resolved if that code is effectively implemented. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, Khalid, do you want to just give some closing remarks on the idea of a percentage of garment factories in Pakistan involved in the exploitation of workers, and whether any local or international brands are complicit? And I thought it was a funny final sentence: who is more to blame, the authorities or the lust for profit? But and perhaps you can just give a 1-minute closing remark on that, and then we will close the session.
100% factories. 100% factories are involved in these violations. I would say, unfortunately, not a single factory we have so far heard that it's free from violations. I give you only one example. One of the biggest group of Pakistan based in Faisalabad, very active. The owner is very active on social media, very prominent. We are receiving sexual harassment cases recently, sexual harassment cases, dismissal of workers, systematic dismissal of workers. This is one of the best known factory of Pakistan and the group of factories of Pakistan. So 100% I would say. And lust of profit, of course, not only for the brands, the local employers, and systematic corruption that is happening locally in Pakistan and in the global purchasing practices and in the global economic system. These are the basis for these kind of violations happening in not only Pakistan but all other producing countries as well.
Well, thank you very much. I think, there's lots of work to be done, as has been shown through this webinar. So, for those of you working in this space, we're always happy to have conversations and welcome discussion about solutions to these problems. I want to thank you, give a big thank you to all of our speakers for these really thoughtful and important contributions to this subject. I think, we've heard clearly that access to remedy depends not only on the grievance mechanisms, but those that are given the capacity and support to support workers, and also the mechanisms being safe and trustworthy for workers to engage in. So with that, I would like to close this session. Thank you all to the attendees for taking an hour out of your day to listen to our contributions to this discussion. And yeah, as I said, I welcome any follow-up. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You.